All right, everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah?
Today, we are heading down to the Florida Keys,
Oh, nice.
specifically to the very tip of Key West, to explore Fort Zachary Taylor Historic State Park.
I love Key West.
Yeah, and it seems like every time we do one of these deep dives, we just find more and more fascinating material to really dig into. And this time is no exception. We've got the Florida State Parks website, obviously.
Yeah.
We've got information from Wikipedia and then even some more descriptive texts about the park.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff to work with.
A lot of good stuff, yeah. And so I really think we can give the listener a real deep dive, no pun intended, into what makes Fort Taylor unique.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal for us. Because on the surface, it's like, oh, it's an old fort on a beach.
Right, yeah.
But we're going to find out. I think there's so much more there.
So much, yeah, and that's what I think is so cool, because you've got this blend of significant historical significance and natural beauty. And so it's like, you're getting a 2-for-1 deal.
Absolutely.
You can go there and you can learn about history and you can enjoy, the sun and the surf and the sand.
Yeah, and it's consistently rated Key West's best beach, too.
Really?
So we've got that going.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So let's start, I guess, with the history side of things.
Okay.
So construction on the fort itself started in 1845.
Wow, way back.
Way back 1845, and it's actually part of this larger push to fortify the southeast coast. So they were really concerned after the War of 1812.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is a big project, obviously.
Yeah, 1845. I'd imagine it was a pretty big undertaking.
It was a huge undertaking. And if you actually go back and look at the timeline for this thing, it's fascinating.
Okay.
So they actually picked this spot on Thompson Island back in 1822.
Wow. So decades before.
Decades before. And then the plans were actually finally approved in 1836. So you've got all this planning going on before they even start putting shovels in the ground.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And then it finally got its name in 1850 after President Zachary Taylor died.
Right.
So that's where the name comes from.
Yeah.
Now, the construction itself was overseen by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, so the big dogs were involved.
So big dogs, yeah. I mean, this was a serious project.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have to talk about is that enslaved people were leased to do a lot of this work.
Right, and that's something that's really important to acknowledge. The human cost of these kinds of projects.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it actually, this actually led to a significant increase in the enslaved population in Key West.
Really?
Yeah. It's a sad reality of the time, but it really shaped the demographics of the area.
Yeah, that's really interesting how just one project like this can really have a ripple effect on a whole area.
Yeah.
So what did the fort itself look like?
Yeah.
What were they building?
So they used oolitic limestone.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it.
So oolitic limestone it's a type of limestone, and it's made up of these little tiny round grains.
Interesting.
And it's pretty common in that region, and it's known for holding up really well in coastal environments.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, and then they also use New England granite.
Okay, so a mix.
Yeah, a mix. And the walls were 5 feet thick.
5 feet thick. Wow.
Yeah, this thing was built to last.
It sounds like it, yeah.
And inside you have these 2 tiers of casemates, which are essentially these protected gun positions.
Okay, so little rooms where they could shoot out from.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, you had this flat upper level called a terraplane.
Okay.
And that was for even more artillery.
Oh, wow. So this was a serious fortress.
Oh, yeah. They were really prepared for anything.
And how many guns are we talking?
Well, the original design called for 42 guns.
42. Wow.
Spread across the 3 levels.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of that, the side that faces the land, which is called the Gorge, had barracks for 800 men.
Oh my gosh, this was like a small city.
It really was, yeah. It was a self-contained military installation.
Yeah.
And they even had to think about the water supply, right? Because, you're out on an island.
Right.
So they built these underground cisterns to collect rainwater.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and the construction wasn't easy.
Okay.
They had to deal with yellow fever outbreaks.
Oh, no.
And they were constantly running out of building materials.
Yeah, that makes sense being so far out there.
Yeah, so it was a huge logistical challenge to get this thing built.
Wow, but they did it.
They did it, yeah.
So by the time the Civil War rolled around, this must have been a pretty important asset.
It was crucial. And, there was a report in 1860 that actually highlighted just how important Fort Taylor was.
Okay.
And they said it wasn't just important for Florida,
Hmm.
it was important for the entire Atlantic coast.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that strategically valuable.
Yeah. And the Union was very lucky that they held on to it then.
They were incredibly lucky, and that's actually because of the actions of Captain John Milton Brannan.
What did he do?
So on January 13th, 1861, before he even got any official orders,
Wow.
he decided he was going to move his Union troops into the fort.
So he just took initiative.
He took initiative, yeah, and by doing that, he essentially prevented the Confederates from taking it over.
That's amazing. He just saw what needed to be done and did it.
He did, and that single action really secured this really vital location for the Union.
And I'm assuming that allowed them to really control that whole area.
Exactly. They were able to launch the Union blockade from there, and that significantly disrupted the Confederate supply lines.
Wow. So Captain Brannan's quick thinking really turned the tide.
It really did. It was at a turning point moment.
So what happened to the fort after the Civil War?
Well, it continued to evolve and change over the years.
Okay.
For example, in 1898, during the Spanish-American War, they made some big modifications to it. One of the things they did was they added a battery called Battery Osceola.
Yeah.
And that battery housed these two really powerful 12-inch M1895 guns,
Wow.
which was a significant upgrade in firepower from the Civil War era.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that they actually used old Civil War cannons as fill material.
So they just buried the old cannon?
Buried them. Yeah. I mean, it's like they were literally building on top of history.
That's fascinating.
And then they also added Battery Adair, which had these rapid fire rifles, which shows you how military technology was advancing.
Yeah, it's like each era is leaving its mark on the fort.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that it didn't stop being used after that.
Really?
It was used in World War I,
Wow.
World War II, and even during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's incredible. It's like a living timeline of American history.
It really is. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so special.
So when did it finally stop being a military fort?
Well, in 1947, it was turned over to the U.S. Navy. And then something really interesting happened in 1968.
What's that?
A group of volunteers, led by this guy named Howard S. England, started excavating the fort.
Okay.
And they discovered all these buried Civil War era guns and ammunition.
Wow.
And it turned out to be the largest collection of Civil War cannons in the entire U.S.
That's incredible. Just imagine unearthing all of that history.
I know, and I think that discovery really helped cement its status as a national treasure.
It makes sense.
And so in 1971, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places.
Rightfully so.
And then in 1973, it became a National Historic Landmark.
Awesome.
And there's also this interesting connection to the Truman Annex.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
So the land that's closer to downtown Key West, which was originally part of the fort's military reservation, it ended up becoming part of this annex to the Naval Air Station Key West.
Okay, so that whole area was really connected to the military.
Yeah, and the Naval Air Station itself has a really cool history. It was even a submarine base for a while. And then, of course, there's the whole connection to President Harry S. Truman.
Oh, right. The Winter White House.
Exactly. He used the Naval Station Key West as his winter White House.
Wow. It's amazing to think of all these historical figures walking around the same place.
I know, and even after the naval station was decommissioned in 1974,
Yeah.
it still played an important role.
Really?
Yeah, during the 1980 Mariel boat lift, it was a receiving point for a lot of Cuban refugees.
Wow. So it's like even after its military life ended, it was still involved in these significant historical events.
Exactly. It's like this place has been at the heart of so much history.
It has.
And then on top of all that, you've got this incredible natural beauty.
Right. The beach.
The beach, they call it Key West's best beach.
And it's a natural beach, right?
It is. And it's interesting to think about that distinction. What makes it natural versus man-made?
Yeah. I mean, I guess a natural beach is formed by natural processes.
Yeah.
The currents and the tides and the erosion.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Whereas a man-made beach is more like engineered. They bring in sand and try to create a beach where there wasn't one before.
Right. So it's like, this is nature's creation.
Yeah, untouched.
And it's at the southern tip of the park where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you've got two different bodies of water meeting right there.
Exactly. Yeah. And the sources talk about, all the amazing things you can see while you're snorkeling there.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Parrotfish, those really colorful ones.
Yeah.
Yellowtail snapper. You can even see lobster.
Oh, wow.
And different types of coral. So it's like a whole underwater world.
That's incredible. And it's all right there, accessible to anyone.
Yeah, and if you like to fish, you can go fishing off the West Rock Jetty,
Oh, cool.
which runs along the Key West shipping channel. Just, make sure you have the right licenses and everything.
Always good to check the regulations.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and if you're more of a landlubber, they also have these wooded nature trails
Oh.
where you can go bird watching and see all the native plants.
It sounds really peaceful.
Yeah, and the sunsets are supposed to be spectacular.
Oh, I bet right at the point where the two waters meet.
Yeah, it's like this perfect blend of natural beauty and the silhouette of the fort.
Wow. I'm adding that to my bucket list.
Yeah, you got to see it in person.
So what are some of the practical details people need to know if they want to visit?
Okay, so the address is 601 Howard England Way in Key West.
Got it.
The park itself is open from 8:00 a.m. to sunset every day.
Okay.
But the fortress is open from 10:00 a.m. to 5:00 p.m.
Okay, so you can get there early and enjoy the park and then go explore the fort.
Exactly. And there are entrance fees, so if you're driving in with 2 or more people, it's $6 per vehicle.
Okay.
If you're solo, it's $4.50.
All right.
And then each additional person is just 50 cents.
Not bad.
And if you're biking or walking in, it's $2.50.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and they have these Chicky Hut beach rentals where you can rent umbrellas, chairs, rafts, even snorkel gear.
Perfect.
You just need a picture ID and a deposit for some items.
Makes sense.
And they're open from 10:00 a.m. to 5:45 p.m.
Got it.
And then if you get hungry or thirsty, there's the Cayo Hueso Cafe,
Okay.
which is open from 10:00 to 6:00 p.m.
Nice.
And for more information on tours and rentals and the cafe, you can call them at 305-295-00037.
Perfect.
And if you're thinking about having a private event or even a wedding there,
Oh, wow.
you can contact Kirsten Corpian or Taylor Richardson.
Good to know.
Yeah, and for general information, or if you're interested in volunteering, you can call the Park Ranger's office at 305-292-6713.
Okay.
Or you can write to them at their P.O. Box.
Awesome, and I hear they do some really cool events.
They have annual events like Civil War reenactments.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and they offer guided tours of the fort, and they've got these interpretive panels throughout the site.
Okay, so you can kind of learn at your own pace.
Exactly, and then on the third weekend of every month, they have these historic demonstrations with the reenactors.
Oh, wow. I would love to see that.
Yeah, and it's not just the fort and the beach. They have all sorts of activities.
Oh, like what?
You can go bicycling, hiking, paddling,
Nice.
picnicking, scuba diving.
Wow. So there's something for everyone.
Yeah, and in terms of amenities, they've got everything accessible, features beach access, a canoe and kayak launch, the cafe gardens, exhibits, nature trails, parking restrooms, showers, water fountains.
Wow, they really thought of everything.
They did, and it's interesting because the park's website says it's 54 acres,
Okay.
but Wikipedia says it's 87 acres.
Huh. That's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it's probably because of landfilling over the years.
That makes sense.
But either way, it's a good-sized park with a lot to explore.
It sounds like it.
And they really want to emphasize that this is a natural beach, not man-made.
Right.
Which is really cool. And then you've got the coral reefs just offshore.
So it's like a paradise for snorkeling and diving.
It really is.
So after all this, what's your biggest takeaway from our deep dive into Fort Zachary Taylor?
For me, it's the combination of history and nature.
Right.
It's not just a place to learn about the past, it's a place to experience it.
Yeah. You can literally walk from the historic fort onto a beautiful beach.
Exactly. And you can see how the past has shaped the present.
And how nature has played a role too.
Absolutely. So it's like you're getting this multi-layered experience.
It's really unique.
It is. So here's a thought for the listener, thinking about how Fort Zachary Taylor went from being this military fort to this amazing state park.
Yeah.
What other historical sites out there could be transformed into something similar?
Well, that's a good question.
It makes you wonder what other stories and natural beauty are just waiting to be rediscovered.
I like that a lot to ponder.
Yeah. So until next time, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Yeah. Thanks for exploring Fort Zachary Taylor with us.
See you next time.